Mr. Desai, I have a question for you. Mr. Desai is with Imami Agrotech, and he runs a company that many of you may not know, but it's only 9,000 crores. So he is going to tell us how to reach 9,000 crores in 1 year.
Yeah, it took us 3 years.
Oh my God!
Yeah.
So I was not. I was not grossly wrong. So
yeah, but good thing is that we are like that Vodafone ad pet dog. I don't care where the kitchen is changing, but as long as the food is being cooked in oil, we are happy. So we sell edible oils, and we are happy to do so. Just to say that last time, a couple of months back, I was in World Food India. So by the time I reached the stage, the syllabus has changed. But here I realized that subject itself has changed, but still I'll try to do what I can. But in terms of the last 3 years, I see a big change in I've been in the same sector for long enough, but in the last 3-4 years, the consumption has shifted dramatically from the loose oil to the packed oils, especially if you are priced as per the Indian consuming segment or the income level. I think sky is the limit. Our brand, which is cost brand rather, not so premium, it has grown about 60 to 70% in the last 1 year itself. So over a period of time, we find that the consumers are moving definitely from commodity to brand. They are looking for source credibility. They would like to see which company, what company stature, is the company known for selling pure and trusted brands or not. I think that plays that helps a lot when you want to brand. They also see the safety angle. As you know, many food commodities are adulterated. So once you are able to provide consistently a good quality with a good packaging, I see not much problem in reaching out to the households. So I think in terms of edible oil consumption, it's a complex market, right? So we have the likes of Patanjali also in certain segments. We have Marico, Adani. There are a lot of competition also. But what we realize is that yes, it is a very price sensitive small margin business, but if you are able to scale up your business to a large scale, if you know how to manage the risk of the price volatilities and distribute. Today we have achieved this just about by reaching, I think, direct and indirect put together hardly about 200 or 250,000 outlets. But our aim is to reach 500,000 outlets. So I see a big scope in this changing habits in promoting brands and make a small difference. So we are going to advertise, though it is a commodity brand, though we are going to advertise on TV and then promote the brand in the way that it deserves. So we need to have in our segment various brand propositions. Some are premium, wherein you will sell on health grounds. Our brand name is Healthy and Tasty. It's going national. It's gone national. And then we also have other brands for a different segment, which is a price conscious segment. See, at the end of the day, in these markets in India, over 50% of the population, the daily income is hardly $4, $3.5 to $4 a day. So you need to have products for all different segments. That's what we realize. Then comes the issue of e-commerce and modern trade. We see that compared to the general trade, modern trade is there. We are catching up, but still relatively very small. It gives us a lot of leeway. It gives a brand image once you are present in the modern trade. So we would pursue that. But unfortunately, as far as e-commerce or digital internet marketing, that's been talked about. As far as food like edible oil is concerned, right now the percentage of sale is very, very small. I think not even just about 1.5% of our sales, though we are trying to see the change coming in. I think with the next generation, more and more e-commerce or online buying will happen. So at that time, we want to catch up with that changing patterns, changing consuming habits, by really offering very premium oils, innovative new tech oils. We should have a reason to sell. We should differentiate ourselves. So that's how we would approach these markets.
So, Ms. Desai, one of the easiest way to sell oil is to try and convince the people that fat is actually better than sugar. Because if, I don't know how many of you know about keto's diet, but it is a great myth that oil is actually harmful as much as they make it out to be. But
Yeah.
it is commonly known that sugar and carbohydrates actually cause a bigger problem. So
It's a major source of energy
Your
and,
market could, and it's a clean source of energy for the body, and therefore I think, Kamal, I have a question for you. You've done enough work in data, so so how are you using data to make life better for sourcing or creating value in the category? So tell us what categories you're handling as well.
So the first part of data is really that how does distribution change in India? You look at modern trade. Now Future Group is present in 255 cities of India. But supply chain distribution is largely a general trade construct. We deal with multiple distributors. There are debit notes and credit notes which are passed every month. And we are not really exchanging data seamlessly. We are not working as if, we are connected through servers, we are connected on SAP, and we can have real-time access to data. I think, to me, the first thing that happens post-GST and what data can enable us to do is, it can help us build central supply chain. It can help us pick stocks directly from factories of, brands. It can help us do business with 10 invoices in a month, 10, payments in a month, no debit notes, no credit notes. So what it means is that the sales team can just focus on sales. We can streamline operations using data to a large extent. That's on the supplier side. There are huge opportunities that we can unleash once data freely flows from one organization to another and we are connected. The second really is that we believe that data enables us to know what customer is buying, what he will buy, and it changes the way we have done retail. So recently, as an organization, we have talked about retail 3.0. So what we believe is that the next stage of retail is going to be one-on-one marketing. It's going to be about omni-channel. It's going to be about convenience stores where people can reach you. So what does data really do? It makes place of shopping insignificant for you. So if I am present within 2 kilometers of the catchment, I can deliver you anything. I think that's the construct we are working on. Let's say if I have 1 crore loyal consumers, I know their ethnicity, I know their family size, I know their religion. I can launch makki ka atta in Hyderabad and sustainably sell it.
Kamal, why are you not already in omni-channel?
Why are we not only in omni-channel?
Why are you not already in omni-channel?
Well, we are not already in omni-channel because we believe that the cost of delivery right now with the kind of, let's say, stores that we have is prohibitive. But as we go ahead, as we build a loyal set of consumers, we will be able to do the job much better. So our plans is, let's say, to be 10,000 stores in a few years, which help us reach consumers. That's one.
But Kamal, I have a theory.
Yeah.
Offline retailers never make good online retailers. Why? Because they love their stores too much.
Till 2017.
If they had not loved their stores too much, Barnes & Noble wouldn't be put out of business by a small Amazon.
No, there is always a till the time something emerges, there is always a belief. So the belief that offline cannot be good in online stands hold true, but maybe 3 years down the line, it just won't happen. And that's our hypothesis.
Sure.
Yeah.
I agree, but I think you're absolutely right. Anyone who is not using data today,
Yeah.
and I think we are not connecting enough, is like saying I'm not breathing, right? You're not using the power of the data, and I think existing retailers are really at fault for not using data well enough and sharing it with their vendors and partners and getting them aligned to give customers specific promotions. So I think this is your time. The next 3 years, I think data should rule.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's the biggest thing that e-commerce does. That you know your consumer, you know what he or she is buying, and you can have a one-on-one relationship with each and every consumer.
Sure.
Yeah. Thanks.
So, thanks, Kamal. Yogesh, in Del Monte as a company is one of the most revered companies in the world for what you do in agri-value addition, if I may say that. And I have traveled and I've seen what Del Monte does in other parts of the world. Would you replicate that in India? Will you help the farmer gain better values? You're working at the front end as well as the back end. You do both. And I think that's the biggest thing you can do for the farmers of this country. So kindly tell us how you're going to improve the lot of the farmers and the consumer.
I think the point you make is pretty valid in the context of Del Monte and the fact that, we've got a history since 1892 and we've got a history in terms of working with the agri supply chain. I think huge opportunities exist in India, and I think as far as Del Monte's journey in India is concerned, we do have a small, relatively small back-end business where we actually do our own fresh growing. The idea being that for the consumer-facing Del Monte brand to have a credible, sustainable supply line at the back. And we do actually do that for some of our canned fruits and for some of our canned vegetables that we're doing in India. We also actually export that. In terms of, so we have been committed to the program of doubling farmers' income, for example, by 2020 or 2022, whatever is the time frame that is relatively possible. Currently, if I can give you a little bit of an example, and thereby technology has played a role in what I'm going to say next. We work with about 6,000 to 7,000 farmer groups today across north, south, and west of India. We largely work on the produce side where we do our own vegetables, largely products that we do value addition on in terms of, say, canning or in terms of processing. For example, we would do jalapenos. And my friend Oliver wouldn't know it here, but we would actually export it to his parent company in Germany. And we would give traceability on the jalapenos. And that would come through our own growing of farmers. And we also have our own model development farms up in Ludhiana and also down in Hosur. What we've actually done is to really work closely with these farmer groups. We are using a lot of technology at the back end in terms of real-time GPS data, because one of the most important thing is really about traceability. The other important thing is about pest management, because as you all know, as food, and we all have talked about it, two things that are continuously happening is food safety and hygiene. So one of the things that you are seeing already in India is the growth of the food industry is not only being propelled by the consumption, but it's also being propelled by the informal or the unorganized moving into organized, and one of the things that's driving that really is this whole thing about the consumer wanting to be more aware about food safety and hygiene. And one of the things that goes back into it is really to have a credible supply line. Now, you really cannot say my food has got heavy metals if you really haven't done anything about that. To go and check produce at the end and say that this is good or bad means really nothing, because at the end of the day, the supply lines have really not been and I can give you an example. We actually do our own growing on our model farms, and we actually realize that apart from the pest management processes that we may have, integrated IPMs as we call them, the produce may still have traces of pesticide residue. Now, where the hell did it come from at the end of the day? So there's water which is contaminated, there's air which is there, So and if you go and talk to experts globally, they will tell you that it's not only important what you're doing on your own farm, but you also have to be responsible, and the word is responsible, about what's happening on the adjacent farm. Now, how am I supposed to be responsible for the adjacent farm, for heaven's sake? Now, and that talks about a lot and a lot of doing at the back end. So I think we are committed to that. In our own small way, we've started making an endeavor. But I think through the use of internet and technology, the ability today to have much larger social contact with farmers and thereby have knowledge sharing sessions is becoming a reality. And that is definitely helping us.
No, I think if there is any problem we have in this country is poor value addition at the farm level. And that's where I think a lot of resources have to go, and companies like yours who have value added brands can push that value up the supply chain. But are you seeing farmers to be receptive to what you're saying? Do they follow what you're saying?
I think they are very receptive, and I can give you an example of from doing, say, cherries in Kashmir to doing baby corn in Maharashtra and doing it in tribal areas of Khed and Manchad in Maharashtra. I think what is important is to show tangible value. What is important is to show commitment. I think what we've done is and we don't term our engagement with the farmers contract farming. We actually term that as partner farming. So we have a group of partner farmers. So we have a pick and pay guarantee, for example, irrespective of what happens in the market, we will buy what we have committed for. So I think over a period of time, and this has been over a period of 7 to 8 years, that you have a commitment from the farmer. And when he sees that tangible value of sheer commitment from your side, they are extremely receptive. And I think what you're also seeing, thanks to technology and once again the internet and the ability of information to reach out to the last man standing in tier 2, tier 3 cities and thereby in adjacent farmlands, is that there is a growing aspiration. The farmers, the children are studying. They are increasingly coming back, and you'll see a lot of progressive farmers in places like up north in Punjab. And I think at the end of the day, the farmer lot is very changed today and very committed to his own upbringing. Yeah.
Sure, I can completely relate to that. Shivam, I have a question. Shivam's from West Coast. I know this is the West Coast. The name of the company is West Coast. They are actually seafood exporter, and it's my belief that there are 4 or 5 industries which are world class, and I'll tell you why. But first, I'll name the industry. One industry is seafood. India does just shrimp alone 250,000 tons of shrimp export every year. The other one is apparel. We beat the world in apparel. The other one is IT. And another one is grapes. What's common amongst these 4 industries is that you have aggregated demand being pushed to India. Anywhere where we receive aggregated demand, like Gap may be giving an order of 1 million pieces or 500,000 pieces, seafood grapes will receive from Tesco, hundreds of containers for grapes. There, the farmer is so clever, our Indian businessman is so clever. There is not a problem in technology, no problem in supply chain, no problem in funding. They will put up what is necessary to actually meet. If you go to a West Coast factory, it'll be world class. Because if you want to export to Japan, you have to be world class. Japan has one of the most stringent food laws in the whole world. And all these seafood plants, seafood companies in India, which are right on top, are world-class factories. So if agriculture is suffering, if horticulture is suffering, there is no aggregated demand. That is the problem. That we don't have large people pushing 40 tons of tomato as a one purchase order. It doesn't exist. Everything comes and dies at the mandi in the city. Okay, so that's my theory. Right or wrong, I don't know. But Shivam, you're going to tell us, you mentioned something about bitcoins and seafood, right? Now that's the topic that we want to hear. Now tell us how you're using bitcoins to pay for seafood that you buy.
No, I mean, firstly, Bitcoin and blockchain are 2 very different things. And
yeah, I know that.
So we're experimenting with blockchain in the back end of seafood to really see how we can add value to farmers' lives. Because like you said, the export market exists, and the global market for seafood is far, far larger than what the Indian market is. And India is a large part of the seafood play in the global sense of it. But we don't actually eat a lot of seafood in India. And that's what Cambay Tiger, the brand of West Coast, has been working on over here. So a big challenge for seafood in India is that actually seafood is consumed in large numbers, but it is all unorganized. So 98% of this industry, of the seafood industry, is completely unorganized. You go to the fish market to buy fish, and that's how it's traditionally been done, and that's how it's done in 2018 as well. So really, how do you change that? How do you organize an unorganized market? And that is what really the opportunity lies. And in 2018, tech has progressed so fast and so much beyond the other industries that go with it, like, let's say, supply chain, right? So the real arbitrage opportunity is to bring tech to supply chain and really see how that can improve that. And I see blockchain as something that can really help us reduce the number of hands that the fish must change before it reaches the end consumer. So if you actually see the aquaculture scene, the farmer itself, it doesn't get much of the value that the dollar that the importer in US or Europe is paying for that shrimp. So by using blockchain, you could eliminate a lot of the frill between the end consumer and the farmer, so that the farmer may get larger benefit. And that is really what our endeavor on the aquaculture side of it is. Of course, there is a lot of implementation of tech and really adding a lot of this innovation to the front end of it as well, from delivering to the customer, and then ultimately delivering that value to the customer, so that it's a win-win for everybody involved.
Blockchain is today what the computer was in 1965. So, so do we have to worry? Do we have to learn? Do we have to read up? Should we become already experts in blockchain and understand, or should we wait for it to hit us?
Right, so I think blockchain is here to stay. I don't think there's any doubt about that. It's like the internet. It's too early today for people to really absorb what the impact of the internet could be. When the internet was launched in the early 90s, people didn't think of Airbnb or an Amazon being billion-dollar companies. That came around in late 2010s. So what we're looking at right now is the early stages of the blockchain industry. I see over the next 3 to 5 years, some very exciting projects will come about. Some of the giants will come about. But the real guys who will do some very, intricate stuff with blockchain, will really innovate with blockchain. I think that's going to happen 5 to 10 years in the future. And it's just about keeping abreast with this information so that when it does happen, we're not left behind. And I think everybody must keep updated with it, to answer your question.
I think it's a great topic for Roy to think about for IR of next year. Yeah. That, how the blockchain is going to allow us to buy. And we've kept the best for the last. So, Prashant, you're going to speak to us about something soulful. Your brand is called Soulful. And you didn't know that on my site, Soulful sells more than Lay's. So, I need to visit you and show you some data. So tell us how soulful is.
So just another fact that you don't know is my past life was in data analytics. So when somebody throws the data at me and that I don't know, it annoys the heck out of me. So good, even if you don't come to my office, I'm coming to yours.
I'm very glad.
Quick background on Soulful. Our entire inspiration has been on, if you see quinoa, I will take a large streak of that inspiration from quinoa, and having seen it in the US side, the question that really posed to us is, if quinoa can become big, why can't India's ancient grains? We have ragi, we have jowar, we have bajra, we have a lot of minor millets, and there's so much of strength in these crops. Over the last 3 years, thankfully, we've also been a country which has no problem with pride. Right? That's something that's changed from, let's say, when I was a kid to now. I have no problem putting my chest out and say I'm actually Indian, and that's a very, very big, bold step. Yoga has helped, Modi has helped, Made in India has helped, and it's all of those factors that has really changed. And in fact, one of the larger pieces for us that's really come into play is with that entire holistic kind of that feel and that outward look towards life, people actually say, okay, why don't we start using these grains? 5 years ago, 6 years ago, I had a lot of resistance, but thankfully there were good retailers who said, you know what, this sounds different, let's try and do stuff around it. The area where internet has really helped us has been a lot in terms of education. We've had so many trade fairs, and the north of India is where we struggle the most, right? Because you go to a Punjabi lady and you tell her millet, she looks at you like, what are you speaking, right? The internet has really, really helped us. No offense to any Punjabi woman out there, sorry. But the internet has really, really helped us in terms of just propagating the goodness about these grains. Again, like Ayurveda or any of these, there are a lot of goodness facts that are there, i.e. grandmother tales. But there are no specific data points that are there, which we work with a lot of research organizations, we work with bloggers, we work with that to propagate this information. Now, the beauty of the internet is it allows these set of the people to kind of propagate that through. I mean, classic voice of the consumer kind of the space. And that's the real space that it's helped us. 3 years in, further out, our entire purpose is to ensure, I come from an agricultural background at the same time. So the oath that I took when I started this company is to ensure that these crops don't go out of our table. Because these crops are darn good. They're good for you, they're good for the farmer, they're good for the environment. Just to give you another data point, these crops use 1/10 the amount of water than any other mainstream crop. They are practically grown organic, and if you visit the fields, you'll really understand the power of these grains at a farm and an environment level. At the same time, if it gets great stuff for you as a consumer, then the onus for us as a brand owner is to develop that into a product that is convenient.
Fantastic. I mean, I was at an agri conference, and what I heard really shocked me, that less and less people every year are cultivating the minor cereals like jawar and bajra and all that stuff. It's because the consumer has stopped eating. They are just eating the white powder. So it's just compounding the issue at the farm level and also at the health level. I think it's a very big issue. A quick rain check that everybody has spoken. Now, I don't see any organizers here. I don't know whether my time is up. As long as somebody stops me, we can take some questions from the audience. $10 All right, that's good for a few questions for sure. Yes, ma'am.
Hello. Hi. My question is for Tej. Tej, we've consciously shifted from Sri Sri Ayurveda to Sri Sri Tattva, right? So what's the motive behind that? I mean, are you consciously trying to move away from Ayurveda to Sattvic, and Sattvic being the consumer brand? Or what are you, so I'm coming back to his question again. So he started in the beginning that how are you different from the Patanjali? So is it, are you trying to get into the entire portfolio? Because of course Patanjali is also present in the entire portfolio. But what's your focus, and what are you trying to achieve with the brand? Is it something different from what the others are doing, or it's just in cashing the growing market?
So to answer that, Ayurveda traditionally, even if you ask people who are in India, does to an extent relate to healthcare, does to an extent relate to medicine. So the move from Ayurveda to Tattva is actually to make the brand more inclusive. It isn't that only after this change we have expanded categories. We have been available in several other major categories even before this change. But we do see now that the value addition of natural products, of herbs, can transcend beyond just being medicine or OTC or even personal care for that matter. So we have a lot of interesting things in the pipeline which will marry the wellness of herbs along with more out there FMCG offerings. And we feel that Tattva would capture that, would also justify that in a sense. Yeah?
So I just checked the Ojasvita. So if you compare the likes of Abbott like Pediasure and Horlicks for that matter, or Bonvita, all of them are fortified with vitamins and whatever nutrients, micro and macro ingredients. So why is Ojasvita not fortified? So why can't we marry Ayurveda with the new vitamins?
Well, I think your question in a sense answers itself. Ayurveda is a more holistic approach to life. Its root is in the herbs, the wellness of natural ingredients. And we believe that our researchers and scientists have done a great job to actually come about with a formulation that is not only healthy by virtue of the herbs being present in them, but also tasty. So certainly one route would be to fortify the product with minerals and vitamins. That would be different. But here the product is fortified by Ayurveda herbs.
Hi everyone, a very good evening. I think in the last two sessions, we've been discussing about creating an Indian brand, which is, as big as probably some of the big global MNCs, right? And also we spoke about certain, I'm talking about food and beverage here, of course. And also we've been, discussing about going back to the Indian roots in terms of, the products that we just mentioned, ragi and, other Ayurveda and everything. But that requires, a lot of capital in terms of creating visibility, educating the consumers. The Indian consumers are moving away from the roots, and they are experimenting different products, global products. So my question is that as an entity or as a group, who's gonna invest in the marketing, the branding? That requires a lot of capital, right? Some of the companies here, you're not as big as some of the MNCs, correct? So who invests in that? The government can facilitate, but somebody has to put in the money to create that visibility, or it will take 10 years, it will take a decade. How do you shorten that time to create that brand? Because the money has to go in, that investment needs to happen, right? So that's my question. So what needs to be done about it?
So I think in one way in which India has been very different, and I'll throw your question to the panel for sure, but one way in which India has been different in the last 100 years is that we've had more MNC brands in this country than Indian brands. Other than Amul, I'm not sure there is any brand which is known from Kutch to Haldia or Kashmir to Kanyakumari. And that's been a failure. If you walk into the exhibition outside, this time I saw some Indian brands which are outstandingly packaged. And the product is also excellent. And I think a time has come where the democratization of the distribution in this country, where everybody believes that he has a chance. The connectivity, the internet has helped a lot. And the startup culture has given the belief that you can be a small company, but you can actually invest and make a great brand. Paperboat is a good example. Soul Food is not small, but I'm saying it's not as big as Lay's, but they've done fantastic work. Right. So I think one part of the answer has got to be that we need to look amongst the investing community to be able to take pride in the Indian brand, to create a brand for ourselves, right? From morning to evening, we're using multinational brands. There's nothing wrong with it. We have always been inclusive in the people we take into this country and the brands. We have no problem. But I think the time has come where losing the foundations. Normally people would change from tradition to new. We are going from new to tradition. We are trying Haldirams, we are trying Patanjali's, we are trying Shri Shri. We are going back to our roots. People are going forwards, we are going backwards in creating brands. So there's nothing wrong. And Soulful is trying to use ragi instead of atta. So where are we going? We are going back to our roots and making it modern. So the question to the panel, and anybody can take this, his question is, who is going to invest in actually making this, going back to our roots, a success? Who's supposed to do this? That's your question.
It's on? Yeah, can you? Yeah. So, answer for that question is the brand has to make the investment. Simple rule, you put $100, you want a return on that $100, you put the $100. Somebody else puts the $100, they get the return on the investment. The question is, how do you be frugal about it? How do you be smart about it? I'm not going to name a specific retailer because I'm just worried that people will run out to that retailer. It's one of the best partnerships that I've had. If I see the amount of capital that we have actually deployed with that retailer is extremely small, but what we've built together as a partnership is insane, is really insane, right? Now, here the understanding is very, very clear of saying, okay, hey, this is what I can bring to the table, this is what I can bring to the table, but the way the partnership is going to be structured is everything else up, so a classic hedge fund kind of a model, right? Everything up from here, we share half-half, right? And that's a brilliant model that works. Now, the thing is, how do you be jugadish or how do you be smart about how do you develop that kind of a model? Now, right after this, I'm going to go and try and go after him and say, hey, is there a model that we can work together, right? Because there are two options again. You throw capital, right? In other words, the entire branding exercise, the entire piece in terms of communicating out to the consumers, there is that entire exercise, which is the classic approach, right? Then the other approach is how can you think out of the box? How can you do stuff very differently, right? There is also another online retailer that we're working with, and where we are very, very clear, we're looking at what is the shopper basket all about, right? Who's buying this? What are my product affinities? Where can we do? What are the linkages? Doesn't cost anything, right? So it costs time, and that is equivalent to capital or resource. So it's just about how you look at it. Definitely not a cheap game, right? But it's just an intense game.
I think what eventually, just as there are investors in startups, I think we forget that there are startup brands, right? And startup brands will have as much value. The biggest problem in this country has been distribution. How do you compete with the large MNCs who've taken 70 years to build what they've built? To set that up is very difficult. Here is where I think the online, the e-commerce, and also the cash and carries of the world, like Metro Cash and Carry or Walmart, these people are distributors great distributors for smaller brands who give the market access to the small brands.
See, another thing, what we have seen with some of the Indian brands, and I would add, whether it is some good Indian movies, right? Or some good Indian products which do well internationally, and then they come back to India. I mean, a classic example is yoga, right? I mean, we're talking about yoga, but 10 years back or 5 years back, if you spoke about yoga, hardly any people. But now you see it's a rage. Everyone wants to, get into that thing, because that visibility that people have been educated about it, right? You have to do that and that's how you come back to the roots, right? What my point is, another aspect, what we have seen that a lot of Indian companies have done well outside, and then they want to capture the Indian market, right? I think example here would be the seafood. A lot of the seafood companies have exported, and now they want to look at the Indian market as well. Of course.
No, I think it is not a new phenomenon. We, require a 5-star certificate from the United Nations to say that we are a great country, right? So I'm not surprised that everything has to go out and then come back in, and many of the brands will actually suffer that same kind of fate. Any other questions in the audience? Anyone else? Okay, I think you guys are completely tired. It's been a great session, and thank you for sitting in, and thank you very much to all the panelists.